You're listening to Open Conversations on Learning Matters, a podcast discussing the challenges our children face in today's educational system and the future of education in the digital age.
Hello, I'm Alec Ostrom. I'd like to welcome you. I'm one of your co-hosts, and I'd like to welcome you to the second episode or edition of our program, which we call Open Conversations about Learning Matters. We're going to try and do one of these about every 2 weeks. And today, we are going to focus on a very interesting topic. And for that, I will turn you over to our co-host, Mr. Brian Hack.
Hello, I'm Brian Hack, one of your co-hosts for the second episode. And today we're going to focus on the topic of letter grades and grading processes in our K-12 schools. But first, a brief review. In our first episode, we talked about the standards education reform movement that was launched in 2002 with a big federal program entitled No Child Left Behind. NCLB established federal academic standards in our K-12 schools for mathematics and English, language arts initially, and then it was expanded to include science and history, social studies. So you take the first letters of some of those and we put it together and we call it MESH, meaning to refer to these as academic standards in the MESH subject areas. So NCLB was also established requirements for teachers to use standardized teaching methods and to focus primarily on preparing students for standardized tests, which were given in April of each school year. NCLB had lots of problems, and in 2015, Congress passed bipartisan legislation to end NCLB and replace it with a new reform program called the Common Core State Standards, which I always called the Common Core, or CCSS, and to remove the most of the punishments of NCLB because schools could just not meet the targets.
Yep. Okay, and we also stated in our first program that our school systems, and we want you to note that word systems, are broken and obsolete. And I want to add just a little footnote there to be clear. When we use the word systems, we are not talking about the teachers, okay? And one of the things that happened under NCLB is it focused a whole lot of blame on the teachers. The teachers were blamed for the students' low test scores. The teachers were blamed for too many students not passing, failing grades, et cetera, et cetera. And so we want to be very clear that when we say the system is broken and obsolete, we are talking about the organizational system of our schools, our K-12 schools. And we're not talking about the teachers. The teachers are working very hard. They're trying their best. They are just working in a system that's broken and obsolete. And as we mentioned last time, what we have right now are essentially factory assembly lines of education. And they haven't changed since the 1950s. They're the same. We're using a same obsolete, outdated agrarian calendar, 180 days. And most of the other nations are at 210, 220, 230, even 240 days annually. And our school days are only 6.5 hours. Their school days are 7 or 8 hours long. So our teachers are really handicapped because they don't have enough time to do their job.
Yeah.
So it's a very difficult situation. And at this time, we're going to have Mr. Hack talk a little bit about today's topic.
So today our conversation is going to focus on the use of letter grades with the standard letter grades of A, B, C, D, and F, or incomplete. And our first question is, where did letter grades come from and why do they continue to be used?
And the answer to that question is, it's just very traditional. It actually started all the way back in 1785, if you can believe that, at Yale University.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. And they came up with a rating scale of 4 descriptors. And forgive me because I am not a Latin student. Optimi, second optimi, inferiores, and pejores.
That's
And
pretty good.
yeah,
like that.
and essentially they then translated that into a numerical system, which went from 0 to 4. And 2, you had to have 2 or higher to get a passing mark. And guess what? It's the same today. We have a grading scale from 0 to 4, and you have to have a grade point average of 2.0 or higher. That's what you're shooting for, okay? Throughout the next century, most of the schools in America, because we were a small nation at that point, they were one-room schools. And they started using various ratings of excellent, good, fair, poor, unacceptable. And
disgrace to your neighborhood for generations to come.
Yes, your family and you, sir, are just a disgrace to this community.
Please move to the next town, please.
Please move away.
Yes.
So then in the 1940s, we kind of adopted a system of letter grades, and it was A for excellent or far above average, B for good or above average, C for fair or average, D for poor or below average, and F for failing or far below average. And the bottom line here is all of this is just totally arbitrary. It was not based on any scientific research. It was not based on any long-term data analysis or anything. It was just arbitrary. The people in the public schools created it. They put it in place, and it became sort of traditional, part of the system. And it was tied to college preparatory studies. So if we look at the overall purpose of our schools, and this goes back also to the one-room schools, and you've heard the use of the word the basics, okay, reading, writing, and math, the 3 R's. Well, the purpose was literacy, teaching people how to read and write, and numeracy, teaching people arithmetic, and then later on mathematics. And then after World War II, in the middle schools and the high schools, we added mathematics, higher levels, again, tied to college prep, algebra, geometry, pre-calc, and calculus. We added the sciences, biology, chemistry, physics. We added history, social studies. And then, excuse me, in some places, we also added foreign languages. That's what we called them then. They call them world languages now. French, Spanish, German, and a lot of schools in the beginning had Latin. So that, kind of became the overall umbrella of academic college prep preparatory studies. And the expectation was that all the students are supposed to be well prepared to go to a college or a university. And also in the 40s and 50s, some places, some cities, some communities had what they called trade high schools or vocational high schools, but they still use letter grades. So let's say you're in wood shop, you're building a cabinet. If you did a really, really good job, you got an A. If your cabinet didn't look too good, you got a C. If your cabinet fell apart, you got an F. Anyway, so today, starting in pre-K, and this has been in place since the 50s, from pre-K through grade 3, we don't use letter grades. We use rating scales, and you're familiar, in my case, when I was in grade 1, 2, 3, the report cards were these old cardboard things that you carried home. Your parents had to sign them, and you got a rating on, how you were doing in reading and in math.
Hard to erase those too.
I know, and they're very difficult to forge also. And then starting in grade 4, we use letter grades, 4, 5, 6, 7 on up. We use the ABC letter grades, and in high school, of course, same thing. And it's been that way since the 1950s, hasn't changed. So the next question is, Brian, what is wrong with letter grades?
So I was thinking about this earlier, and basically what we were talking about is letter grades are a very poor indirect measurement of academic achievement that has virtually no meaning, relevance, or usefulness in the real adult world of the digital age. We talked about a wide range of employers in different career fields. They told us letter grades and grade point averages mean very little to them. They want actual performance ratings of how well the students have mastered their knowledge, skills, attitudes, and behaviors that they require for employees and managers. As a classic example, when you were talking about the grades being arbitrary, I was thinking back on the second half of my career when I had a high school guitar program. So at another high school, I won't mention specifically, but the situation that I visited in meeting with that particular teacher, he was teaching a song called Hotel California. And for his intermediate guitar class, being able to play that in the original key was going to be their final. Now, in my particular program, that song in my beginning guitar program was part of a unit on music from the Eagles. And in that particular unit, in Hotel California, for example, I taught the song in 3 different keys, and students had to be able to play that song in 2 keys, or they could choose any other song that I had in that unit, but it was being able to play the song in different keys. That was a beginning class. So the question you have to assess, to consider at that point is, wow, in this particular location, one standard for one group of kids versus my own standard of what I had in my program. Right. I mean, my gosh, it was just night and day.
Would you also say that it seems to me that the core issue there is in your guitar program or any guitar program or any music program, what you're really doing is rating the students on the level of quality of their performance.
Right.
Okay. Not just taking a test, an academic test, or a quiz, or writing an essay, or whatever. And all those things are important. But when you are dealing with performance, letter grades, I don't know what that means.
They're just, for my program, it was almost an irritation. It got in the way of what I was trying to do. Yeah. I was trying to teach kids that, especially with a musical instrument, like, for example, a guitar, all combinations of string instruments thereof, piano. And I actually taught piano one year, but the point being is that I was teaching kids vocals are an important part.
Sure.
It goes with any song, with any sure. musical instrument. And unless you're a female or a guy with a very high tenor voice, most guys are not real comfortable trying to sing Hotel California. So you move it to a different key, and all of a sudden I can do the song because now it's more compatible. So that whole concept was part of my program. Whereas in another program, who knows, was teaching the basic chord structure.
And I think also, again, in the context we have here, if someone out there in the music industry wanted to hire one of your graduate students who had been in your program for 3 or 4 years, if you say to them, well, Johnny got an A, what does that mean? And now if you say to them, yes, I had Johnny in my program, here are the levels of his performance. Okay, this is what he can do. He can do 50 songs. He can change them all to different keys. He can play them on a lead guitar, rhythm guitar, bass guitar. That's what he can do.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if I'm going to hire him, that's a pretty good picture of what he can do or not do, as the case may be. But if you just tell me, well, yeah, he's a good kid and he got an A, I don't know what that means.
Well, with special ed kids, as we both know, they have an IEP, which is their individualized, academic standards of what they're going to accomplish in that particular program. And I'm in the middle of a meeting, which they all happen during the day, and a lot of times it means your class is interrupted. You've got either a hall monitor or somebody watching your room for a short time, so you can go to this meeting and sign off on all of these forms. And they had a question for me right off the bat. The little girl that we were talking with, or meeting, the parents are there, we're meeting to talk about this young girl's grade. And they're pointing out in the meeting that she was getting D's and F's all over her report card until they got to my class where she's getting an A. So right off the bat, the whole focus of the meeting is, what's going on in your program that's obviously not happening in the other classes. And for me, it was very clear that I just looked at everybody and I said, to kind of get all of you people on the right page here, let's take a very quick field trip. We're going to go right next door where my students are, my advanced kids at that point are actually performing. They're working on stuff in collaboration with each other for a guitar show in about 3 weeks. So we go next door, get up from the table and actually walk out of the room and go right next door to another portable classroom. And we open up the door, and the same little gal is in the middle. She's a sophomore, and she's in the middle of this guys that are seniors that are all like a foot taller than she is. And she's giving them directions about, we missed the chorus. We need to do a verse. Then we're going to do the chorus. We don't go right to the second verse. We have the chorus, and she's explaining all of this, and they're all nodding their heads. And we got a drummer, we got a bass guitar player. She's on acoustic guitar in the middle of all of them, and she's singing, and they're all trying to get their harmony parts. And they're going through all of this, and they stop and they say, wait a minute, let's run it back again. Let's start it from the first verse. So they all start, they're just rehearsing, and they all kick in and they all start playing together. And all the people at the meeting are just looking at me like, oh my gosh, she's down there. She's singing, she's playing, she's working with 3 other guys in a band situation. And I kind of had to tap everybody on the shoulder and say, let's head back to the room, Otherwise, they would have probably sat there and watched her for the next half hour. But I got back to the room, as all of us did, and I said, folks, her grade is really not my focus in what I'm doing. My focus is on the fact that she's in class every day. She does rehearsals on weekends. Some of these guys, actually, they all get together on the weekends. She communicates very well with the other students. I'm into teaching these kids how to perform, to be aware of all these different things, how to operate the electronic equipment that they're using, the microphones and the monitors and all the stuff they got going on. Grades are just almost an interruption with what we're doing, because I'm focused on how to perform and how to function with guitar in a way that really is reflective of the adult world.
Right.
So letter grades just reinforce this industrial factory assembly line. It's kind of the nature of K-12 schools, and they are used to inaccurately label individual students. For example, Billy is a B+ student and Susie is a C- student. Billy will do well because he is the quarterback, and with his B+ GPA, he will do fine in college. And Susie is just a not too bright student cheerleader with a C- GPA who will be a nice mother and a housewife. And then we will find different games being played, weighted grades, the use of what we call 504 plans to enable certain students to have more time on the ACT or SAT college entrance tests. But over the years, what has happened is called grade inflation. So what used to be scored as a C plus a couple decades ago is now scored as a B plus or an A minus. But colleges and universities, they're wise to all of these games. Weighted grades and inflated grade point average, all of that stuff has come to mean less and less. And the true reality for the majority of our K-12 students is that they graduate from high school with grade point averages of C or less because passing grades are D minus or better. And the students who earn GPAs with an A grade or a B grade are supposed to be set up to achieve success in colleges and universities. And the truth is that less than 15% of our high school graduates ever earn any kind of college degree in their entire lifetimes. So if you think about that, 85% of our high school graduates have GPAs and transcripts that have very little meaning or nothing to do with the real adult world of jobs and careers in the digital age. Welcome to high school.
Welcome to K-12. And
yeah,
what we're really saying here is the true reality for our students starting in pre-K through third grade. They don't use letter grades there. They use rating scales. Okay. And then in the fourth grade, we start using letter grades. Okay. And that is also going back to what you said a minute ago. That's where students start to get labeled. They label by the teachers or label by themselves or both. So we push them along from grade level to grade level. And to focus on one very specific important thing in the critical skill set of reading, if you have not learned how to read real well by the end of grade 3, it's too bad, because starting in grade 4, we don't teach reading anymore. There are no reading teachers above grade 4. And when you get to middle school or high school, other than with the exception of the special needs students, we don't help the students who have poor reading skills, and we begin to sort kids out so that the kids who have good reading skills go into the college prep courses, and the kids who have poor reading skills don't. They go into general courses or intervention courses. And then the other thing we do starting in grade 8, it used to be in high school, but now it's in grade 8 or even grade 7. There's another sorter we use called Algebra 1. And if you do really well in Algebra 1, you get an A or a B in Algebra 1. You go into the college prep classes. And if you don't, you get a C or less. You get assigned to general mathematics or intervention courses. So kids get labeled, they get tracked, and that's a very bad word. We're not supposed to use that word.
Right.
But that's the reality of what happens to those kids. And so the question then becomes, for you, Mr. Hack, in our digital age learning systems model that we have written about in our books, how do we transcend this rather arbitrary and obsolete system of letter grades?
So about 10 years ago, after 10 years of research on what students need to know and be able to do after high school, we talked with a wide range of employers in different career fields and jobs, and we did a lot of research in job requirements in the digital age labor market. And we also did a lot of research into what are called life skills for success in adult life in the digital age. From there, we developed what we call our digital age skill sets. And we now have a listing of about 50 of these, and they include the knowledge, skills, attitudes, and behaviors that are required for success in adult life and in virtually all jobs and careers. We also did a lot of research into how employers and managers are evaluated and rated in their jobs or careers. And we quickly learned that in our DALS model, we needed to use mastery performance rating scales that are linked to continuous repeated performance and assessments and feedback, and ultimately to summative performance evaluations. So the point is, we're focused on actual performance of a wide variety of skill sets.
Right. And I think, if you look at the world of work, if you look at various jobs, you look at various careers, one of the most important skill sets, pick a career, any job, doesn't make any difference. One of the most important skill sets is public speaking and oral communication. And as we've said before, we've talked with a number of adults, and if you say to them, oh, by the way, we'd like you to stand up in front of an audience of 2,000 people and give a speech for about 30 minutes, what you get are gasps. People begin to panic and run out of the room and say, no, I don't do that. No. So it's okay. If public speaking is important to the clients, to the customers, to other people in the company, whatever, how do we do that? Well, our K-12 students need to learn how to do public speaking starting in pre-K. And that may sound strange, but they need to do just little short presentations, maybe 30 seconds, 1 minute, I don't know. And then you build it over each grade level. You do a spiral of practice. And as you know from your work with the guitar kids, if you're going to master the guitar, you have to put in hours and hours and hours of practice. And it's the same thing with public speaking or oral communication. So as you get older and you get into middle school and then high school, you've been practicing every year and repeating and learning at a little bit more age-appropriate depth. So when you get to be a senior in high school, you're comfortable with public speaking. You can do a 30-minute presentation with no problem. And you can actually talk with a fairly large audience and feel pretty confident about what you're doing. But what we do now in our K-12 systems is we don't teach public speaking. There are a few kids who get it maybe a little bit in a drama class. There are a few kids, like the kids in your guitar program, who learned how to do it because they had to for the guitar shows.
Right.
But most kids, we don't teach them public speaking. They don't practice public speaking. So they leave high school and they don't know what to do. They're lost. Okay.
The school that I taught at, the 30 years that I taught, probably 28 of those years, I ran the sound system for graduation out on the football field in front of thousands of people.
Yep.
And I just constantly remember sitting behind the soundboard, because I was also at that time teaching economics and government. So I had a lot of senior students. And I'm sitting there watching all the names being read and all the kids walking across the stage and shaking hands with a board member who they've never met in their life. And thinking to myself, oh my gosh, probably 2/3 of the kids were walking across the stage. And I remember, many of them had skidded by with C and D type grades.
Yep.
And of course, at the end of the ceremony, they're all excited because they're done. Their celebration of, I'm done with this place. I get the get the hell out of here. I'm done. I've had it, And I remember thinking to myself, wow, this is all so messed up, because we're celebrating mediocre achievement.
Yep.
And the kids have learned to hate learning.
That's right.
That's what they've learned.
Well, and what's ironic is, in most high school districts, there are specific course requirements. In other words, you have to take, I think it's 3 years of math now. You have to take 4 years of English, and you have your history and social studies you got to take. You got to take a couple of years of science, et cetera, et cetera. But on all those required courses, you only have to get a D.
Yeah.
So what does that say about mastery? Did you take chemistry in high school? Yes, sir, I did. What grade did you get? D minus. Oh, well, I'm not sure what that means. So in our model, we really looked at the real world. And as you did in your guitar program, what are the performance rating scales in the real world?
Well, one example that stands to mind is a lot of times because I had kids repeat classes or go through the program from beginning, intermediate to advanced. So unlike a lot of core teachers, I'm seeing kids a couple years in a row and to know kids. And you get to hear about their conversations at home. And one kid is home having a conversation with mom and dad at the dinner table, which is a phenomenal experience in this day and age. And he's explaining how blues music through the Black culture eventually ended up going kind of up the Mississippi River, north into areas of Chicago.
Yep.
And of course, right away, the parents said, well, that was an interesting lesson that you had in U.S. history. And the kid says, no, this was in Mr. Hack's guitar program. We're learning about blues.
Right.
So the point is that, motivation is a major thing that influences kids. And grading becomes secondary if they're really highly motivated with the topic. If I had tried to teach that out of a textbook, I don't think I would have gotten very far.
No.
No. So performance quality rating scales come from the real adult world of jobs and careers. And when we link these to the teaching learning process of K-12, we find that it provides immediate relevance, meaning, and practical added value for the students. And they perceive this very quickly. So what we have in our present K-12 systems with the use of letter grades is a process that just confuses students. There is no connection between the letter grades and GPAs and the learning and performance quality requirements for jobs, careers, and adult life. And what our students need instead of standardized tests and letter grades and are repeated cycles of performance assessment and feedback. And then at certain points, they need to actually perform to demonstrate their mastery of specific sets of knowledge, skills, attitudes, and behaviors, and to then receive real adult world ratings that are relevant, meaningful, and value added.
Yeah, and I think in your program, one of the things that you discussed with me many times is what you were really doing with the beginning students, the intermediate, the advanced, is as they performed, as they practiced, you said, okay, I'm listening to you. I'm going to assess how you're playing those three particular chords, and then I'm going to give you some feedback. And
Right.
I'm going to repeat that and repeat that and repeat that. So it's like, okay, you've got that B minor chord down pretty well, but your third finger is still not in exactly the right spot. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's assess and feedback and assess and feedback instead of saying, well, on your chord quiz, you got a C. I don't know what that means. And the kids don't know what that means. It's like, okay, what does that mean? I don't know what that means. Okay. And then each year they had to perform in the annual show for the school and the community. So that's mastery level performance.
Yeah.
You either got to deliver the goods, so to speak.
Right.
And what we're seeing in, with letter grades is like, okay, kids don't know what that means. It just confuses them, and other than the traditional sort of labeling that goes on, oh, well, so-and-so is an A student. Okay, woohoo, I don't know what that means. It's not very helpful.
as we have talked about in our book, you have that 10 or 15% of the student body kids, the A students that are college bound. They were thinking about college probably, early on through the family, whatnot.
Sure.
And then you have, ironically, at the bottom of that, you have about 10, 15% of the kids that are just non-compliant. They hate school. They hate the whole system. They're in the vice principal's office once a week. But between those two groups, you have a large group of basically just compliant learners.
Yep.
They're just young people that are, for lack of a better term, they're just punching the clock. They don't want to piss off mom and dad. So I'll be here. I'll be in class. I'll get through the quiz. I'll get a C. That's fine. And that's where we're at.
Yep. Yeah.
So
if we go back to Ardell's model here just a little bit, what kind of grading system would we really use to transcend and go beyond letter grades and GPAs and all of that?
We'll be using performance rating scales that come from the real adult world of jobs, careers, and adult life. And each student will have a dynamic, personalized website with a value-added learner profile and a portfolio, or what we like to call the VLPP. Acronyms are our friends. Each digital age skill set will be listed, and following each skill set, the student learner's current level of mastery achievement will be described in 3 ways. His or her current numerical rating of mastery on industry standards for his or her chosen career field, his or her progress in achieving mastery over his or her years in K-12 education, and then specific examples of his or her current work, including video clips, podcasts, PowerPoint presentations, documents, reports, interviews with teachers and on-the-job supervisors. For example, the skill set is personal finance management. Okay, numerical ratings on a scale of 5, with 5 being highest. So it says, for example, maintains and manages a checking account, 4. Maintains and manages a savings or investment account, 3. Files appropriate income tax returns, 4. Maintains and manages a debit card, 4. Maintains and manages a credit card, 4. Progress in K-12 has added more personal financial skill sets each year since age 8. Recent samples of work. Recently completed a training program in mutual fund investments and a small team project on assisting senior citizens with maintaining and managing their personal finances. Now, if you did that kind of an assessment with a high school student before they graduated, you'd have a much more accurate idea of what they have and haven't achieved. Other than just a letter grade telling you, Billy got an A, here's the textbook. The teacher got through the first 15 chapters. We didn't get to the last 5. We ran out of time.
Sorry.
No mastery of anything.
We didn't quite finish U.S. history this year. We only got to the 1940s.
We got to Ike Eisenhower. That's as far as we got. Yeah.
Well, and what's interesting is in our conversations with parents and with students and with, employers, when we raise the question, do you think it's important for students to learn personal financial management? Mm-hmm. The answer is always absolutely yes. They need to know how to manage their money. They need to know how to deal with a checking account, how to deal with a debit card, how to deal with a credit card, how to avoid getting themselves in a big credit card debt and having all kinds of problems. But where do we teach it in the present system? Answer, we don't.
People that read our digital age skill sets, the reaction we constantly get from students and parents, oh my gosh, why didn't we learn this in high school?
Exactly.
And it's like, well, the system doesn't allow for that.
No,
You know?
it just doesn't. It's not there. The system is focused on academics, English, math, science, social studies, foreign language, and the other electives, they're called, visual and performing arts, or the vocational classes or whatever. They're sort of viewed as something lesser, something that's kind of an option, not real important. What's important is getting an A in English or a B in chemistry or whatever. And yet, when you go out and talk with the people who are going to hire these high school graduates, they don't care about all that.
No.
They want to know, can you do public speaking? The other big one is, can you deliver really high quality customer service?
Yeah.
Can you do that? Do you have those skills? Where do we teach customer service? Answer, we don't.
Yeah.
Not there.
No.
Okay. So, and what's going back to something you said earlier, which I think is really important, kids immediately are engaged. When you tell them, hey, we're going to help you learn how to manage your money, they are right there. They are paying attention. They want to know that. That's something that's very valuable to them, and they see it very quickly. Whereas we have the infamous question often asked in the history classes that you and I taught, when will I ever use this?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. I had to figure out about 4 different answers to that one. But, it's like, hey, kids know what's going on, and they know what's going on in the real world, in some cases far better than we give them credit for. And so to them, again, to summarize here, letter grades are just meaningless. It's like, yeah, ho-hum. What'd you get in Algebra 2? Well, I got a B. So what? And as I tell people,
Yeah.
I am now 75 years old. I've had 3 careers, and I have never, since high school, factored a polynomial. Just don't do it, But I had to learn that in high school, and I had to pass a test. So there you go. Anyway,
I remember, I'm teaching my class, and all of a sudden I get a phone call, and I look up and I grab one of my students, doesn't matter which one. I said, Mike, I need you to go down to the library. They have a meeting going on and they can't get the sound system working. So can you go down and take care of that? Yep. Student walks out and I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll be back in 10 minutes. Well, he just, kids learned all of this stuff, and then they were applying that.
Yep, that's the key.
Their everyday life.
So for our next program, we're going to kind of continue on this theme a little bit, and we're going to dig into the digital age skill sets in more depth and really talk about K-12 curriculum and all of that stuff. So we really appreciate all of you joining us today, and I think we'll end it right there.
We will leave it there for today, and our next program will focus on more conversations about the digital age skill sets and how the curriculum and teaching works in our DALS model. All right. Well, thank you, folks.
I got a dozen roses for the girl upstairs, living on the second floor.